We have really an interesting discussion today around unlocking those opportunities and using the technologies to build better cities. And so if hopefully you're in the right room. This is where, it was a little bit difficult to find, unfortunately, but hopefully you made it over here. And if you're here, you're in the right place. And with that said, I want to welcome Monika and Vader. They can give a little introduction and background of themselves and then jump to the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Well, so nice to see everyone. Because it is a smaller group, what I'm going to propose is we'll do a bit of a discussion. I'll ask Bader to introduce himself. We'll do a bit of a discussion. And then I actually wanted to open it up afterwards. So we'll make sure that we leave some time for Q&A. And again, I'd love to hear some other perspectives from the room. So I am currently the Managing Director of Planning and Housing at Esri Canada. For those of you who may not be familiar, Esri Canada is a global leader in providing enterprise-grade GIS or geospatial information system data solutions. So recently, Esri Canada has a renewed focus on AEC and planning and housing, which is why we're interested to attend this conference, and Caesar from Esri is here as well from the AEC group. But the planning and housing division is kind of why I'm here today to talk a little bit more about what is happening in the residential sector in terms of our housing supply. We all know that we've got a housing supply crisis across the country. And so the new planning and housing division at Esri Canada is really focused on providing all sorts of data and technology solutions to both the public and private sector professionals trying to solve Canada's housing supply crisis. So I'm excited to be here with Bader, and I've known Bader for a number of years. He was one of the early customers of Ratio.City. Prior to joining Esri Canada, I was also the CEO and co-founder of Ratio.City, which was a Toronto-based prop tech company acquired by Esri Canada last year. So today we're going to talk about the challenges and opportunities specifically in the multi-unit residential market. We're going to talk about development activities, acquisition, which again is sort of the early stage of construction. I know it's a construction conference, but the early stage development and acquisitions is the leading indicator for construction. So that's why we thought this would be interesting. And as well, I know that Bader's always been very interested and intuitively understood the value of data and innovation. So with that, I'm going to invite Bader to introduce CentreCourt and some of the portfolio that we're doing. If we could switch to the CentreCourt slides.
Sure, thanks, Monika. Bader Elkhatib, so I'm a partner and Senior Vice President at CentreCourt. Day to day, I lead our land acquisition efforts. I'll give you a brief introduction to CentreCourt. If you just want to go, do I have access?
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. This is one of our projects. It's the Pickering Town Center. So that's a recent acquisition of ours where we acquired 60 acres in downtown Pickering. Eventually will become, a 10 million square foot mixed use community. This is us at a very high level. So CentreCourt, we're a vertically integrated high-rise residential developer. We've been around for a short 14 years. I've been with the company for 7 of those 14. But I like to say we've done some remarkable things in a very short period of time. Today we have 17 completed projects totaling 6.3 million square feet of GFA and just shy of 9,000 units. We have 5 other buildings under construction, which should be complete within the next 12 months. That's another 2 million square feet and 2,800 units. And we have 14 towers in our pipeline, which is just over 10,000 homes. So all this said, how we got in here, how we become successful, largely is a function of the way we view the construction business. We're not architects. We're not planners. There's a bunch of engineers on our team. I'm an ex-investment banker and private equity guy. Most of our team is made up of lawyers and bankers. We look at construction of homes as a manufacturing business because that's what we're doing. We're manufacturing homes. They just happen to be concrete and steel and in the city. And we've been able to run our business with that type of financial mindset. And over the years, we've been able to I would say get other traditional real estate companies to believe in our methodology. Today, we're very proud to call some of our partners, Choice Properties, which is the largest, I believe the largest retail REIT out there, Cap REIT, which is the largest Canadian apartment REIT, Dream, Smart Centers, as well as Creatio, which is an arm of the City of Toronto. So I like to think of us as the developer of choice, and a lot of our work has to do with this. Today, many people in the development industry typically do one or two things. Obviously rezoning of land, sales. We happen to do everything in-house. So everything from capital, we have dedicated capital. We have about $1 billion of equity under our management, around $250 million of liquidity today. I'm in charge of deploying that capital. We have existing banking relationships. We only bank with the large 6 Canadian banks. We don't do anything with foreign banks or mezz lenders or anybody else in the capital stack. Sales, we internalized sales many years ago, about 6 years ago. So we run our own sales program in-house. Construction, we brought in-house in 2015. And so we self-perform our own construction. Actually, of the 140 people at CentreCourt, around 70 would be construction staff. In terms of accounting and finance, all that is done in-house as well. And then customer care, which is the most important. Ultimately, we are selling people's homes. And as you can imagine, the delivery cycle is not short. And so those constant touch points, changes that do come up from time to time, all that is taken care of internally. This is a differentiator. We don't use, historically we used third-party CMs. Over the last number of years, we've come in-house. I think if there's any CMs in this room, I think you'll appreciate this. It's not a get-rich-quick scheme. Being a CM is a really tough job. And most of these business lines we didn't create because we thought they were great business lines per se. We just need to have more control over our final destiny. And relying on people that we could hire and train and have them think through the CentreCourt lens. And so that's really why we're vertically integrated. We view it as a risk mitigation measure more than a business proposition, for CentreCourt parent company. Again, so 22 towers sold, just over 11,000 homes, and around $6.3 billion of development value. Very proud of the bottom. 0 days of interim occupancy. So we go straight to final closings. We don't have construction staff just rolling around for 12 months after people have moved in. 0 canceled projects, which is astonishing in today's market. And everything we do is always fully zoned and construction ready. These are our projects. Very quick snapshot. What I highlighted in red is what I thought was relevant to this group, just to showcase our construction expertise. You can look at any example, but I'll use Grid as one, just smack dab in the middle there. Grid is a 50-story building at Dundas and Jarvis here in the city. It's a substantial building, around 400,000 square feet of GFA. So P3 below grade and a 50-story building, we did that in 29 months. You might say that that's a one-trick pony. So we'll look at, what's another building, another big one. 55 Mercer, 47 stories, 358,000 square feet, significant density, significant complications with heritage. We did that in 35 months. Prime, 46 stories, 350,000, 30 months. It's kind of our secret sauce. The reason why I'm speaking at a construction conference is construction is the way we try to differentiate ourselves in our industry. There's just so much value that can be created or destroyed through project delays. And I would say those challenges today are more acute in light of the current costing environment, not just the cost of building, but the cost of financing. So every single month, is very substantial. And ultimately, it hurts what we're trying to solve, which is housing affordability. These are just some of our pipeline projects. So right now, we have, I don't know how many people are local or not, but we have a pretty strong presence out at Kipling and Bloor, which is in Etobicoke in the outer 416. We have 1.25 million square feet there across 3 buildings. We actually just had a groundbreaking for one of our projects that's starting construction this month, and we have 2 more in the pipeline. We have, that's 529 Joplin and 5359 Dundas. 254 to 260 Adelaide. That's actually just up the street from here. It's the fire hall, like just on the other side of this building. That's a joint venture with us and Create TO, the City of Toronto, and that's a 61-story building, 600,000 feet. Queen and Church, Yonge and Jarvis, 2200 Eglinton, in the Golden Mile, which is a 40,000 new homes being unlocked on Eglinton Avenue East. That's really us in a nutshell. We are very active. I don't have the slide here. We are, in our 14-year tenure, we'd be considered the second largest developer in the City of Toronto by units sold. And so we're very proud of what we've accomplished in such a short period of time. Our team all kind of looks like me, i.e. no hair and young. We're a group of really young professionals. We have the gray-haired folks who give us guidance and mentorship and remind us of the 90s. But ultimately, I think what makes us unique is our embrace for technology, the fact that we view the different parts of the business not as like a cost or a profit center, but as a tool to get projects off the ground and completed. And I'm really excited to talk with Monika. Monika and I have worked together for several years. I'm the front end of all of this, so I'm the one going out and buying land and putting to production for hopefully all of us to build and work on or benefit in some way.
Excellent. Thanks for that. And again, it is a construction conference. And I did want to start, if anybody who's in the industry, especially in the residential multi-unit space, we got to acknowledge the elephant in the room that, for anybody in Toronto, you walk around, you still see a lot of cranes in the air, but there's very little new coming in the pipeline. So thanks for, so you do have some projects in the pipeline. You've got a handful of projects in construction, but let's face it, the Globe had that article on the weekend about all the insolvencies and the receiverships. It's pretty bad out there for the residential construction market going forward.
Absolutely. I think the people who know me know I don't sugarcoat things, and I don't walk around like the perimeter. Like, things are bad. If someone tells you they're not, maybe they're living in a different market or have been in the Cayman Islands and checking up on the Toronto real estate market. But it's rough out there. To put it in perspective, our shop would historically have sold 2 to 3 projects a year, delivering around 1,500 to 2,000 homes a year. This year we're breaking ground. Last year we sold 3 buildings. 2 are still actively selling. 1 we're breaking ground on. We're breaking ground on 600 units. That is actually a bright spot in today's market. Over the last 18 to 24 months, there's probably been somewhere close to around 100 pre-construction launches. And only 9 or 10 of those actually have reached the 70% sales threshold to begin construction. So if you think about that, there's a 10% success rate. The balance of the projects aren't sitting in this I'm almost there. They're not in second spot going to break ground anytime soon. They're far off. And so it is quite dire out there from a sales perspective. And so what does that actually mean? That means obviously construction starts are severely impacted, materially impacted. City of Toronto, crane count. I think we all talk about the crane count. Most cranes in North America. In terms of how many homes do we actually start every year, probably in the 20 to 25,000 range. Last year I think it was just under 10,000. This year my gut is I'd be under 6. So this is certainly the worst I've seen it in my 14 years. And it definitely rivals that period of time that everyone talks about in the early 90s. Now, how do you fix this? The honest truth is that there is no real obvious fix. Unlike our, I would say American counterparts to the South, where the banking industry is a little bit more, I would say, I don't think the right word's aggressive. I think it's more pragmatic. People have a loss on real estate. They typically look at the loss and say, okay, I'm going to move on. I'm going to crystallize it. I'm going to take the money. I'm going to reinvest it. I'm going to, try my hand at something else. The Canadian mentality is far different. We're kind of a let's wait and see, and no one wants to crystallize a loss. So, to Monika's question, how long does this take to resolve? The honest truth is it's TBD because of the nature of our environment. And candidly, the fact that most developers are well banked by the Canadian banks. Most developers own land at relatively low leverage. So people can withstand the turmoil, but it's definitely not good for business. The honest truth is a lot of those people who got, have gotten crushed or are getting crushed are new entrants. And it's a real problem because the beauty of our industry is the fact that, two individuals in a truck can go start a development company. That's kind of the entrepreneurial spirit that I love about our space. That is, the people who did that over the last several years are definitely at the front end of the challenges of the market today.
I mean, I always like thinking about the housing funnel, right? And so that at the very, very top, there's like every single piece of land across the country. And then of that, which sites are appropriate for redevelopment, which sites are possible to acquire, which sites can you get rezoned, which sites can you get the building permit on, which sites can you finish construction, and sales and the economics. So like, how do you increase, like, are you looking to increase the top of the funnel? Like, well, are you still underwriting? Are you still looking at opportunities? Are they still out there?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, so I'll answer that question in two ways. So from a CentreCourt perspective, we're not I'm not sitting on my hands. Actually, candidly, with this group, the first 18 to 20 months of the downturn have been were the most busy for me. I like to believe that where there's risk, there's opportunity. Where the capital is fleeing, you should go. You're not going to buy everything, but you should be looking really hard. And that's what we're doing today. We're fortunate. We still have a significant amount of dry powder available to us. We have most of our buildings being completed and delivered, which is also very positive. We're also fortunate. Our philosophy is to mitigate risk. I mentioned that 70% sales threshold. We don't carry inventory. I don't sit back and hold back 10% inventory to gamble on the market tomorrow. We sell 100% out the gates and get it off of our balance sheet. So just these prudent measures, which I would say some people have maybe faulted us for, or rightfully or wrongly, have actually proven to really be helpful in a down market. So today we're actively looking. We actually bought something like $400 million of land over the last 3 years. Call it since the cycle turned. And so I think we're really well positioned with our portfolio. We continue to look today, but the honest truth is the bid-ask spread is very wide. So it's very hard to make deals work. And when you have a portfolio like ours, do I really need another piece of dirt? And so unless it's like AAA and it's fantastic and it's something I just can't get my hands on, very rarely the case for this group. You're kind of not motivated to actually acquire it. The funnel's a real problem because the stuff that's in receivership, presumably a lot of that land is the land that's kind of in the middle of the funnel, right? It's a mixed use area. You can develop on it. It probably has some entitlements, but now it's stuck with the banks and the receivers. And that's like a 12 to 18 month lag, or if you call that land inventory is just not, being productive. So there is, and I would say a lot of challenges with that. A lot of that inventory will be gobbled up by the banks themselves. Like the banks will make a credit bid. They'll buy the asset back for their outstanding debt. And it will take a significant amount of time for the market to recover to a point where that can be put back into hands of development and vertical construction. So it's a dire situation out there. I wouldn't want to sugarcoat it.
And again, why I think it's relevant is, again, we all know that there's a housing supply crisis. We know that we've got, CMHC says 3.5 million households short by 2030, and all of it's stuck sort of in the middle. So one of the other things I wanted to chat about in terms of that housing funnel was the urban planning regulatory framework. Anybody who's, again, reading the paper knows that in Ontario, planning rules have been changing really rapidly all over the place. So how have the changes in regulatory planning impacted, again, the early stage acquisition stuff?
So it's actually really interesting. When I first started, again, I'm not a planner. I'm a numbers guy. I kind of said to myself, this is not complicated, right? You read these reports, the rules are kind of there. You read the rules of the game, and it's kind of just playing a really complex game of Monopoly, right? You can figure this out, if you're just patient and you read. What I realize is, there's the volume of material you have to read is overwhelming. And so that's actually where we connected because, Ratio.City, the tool that Monika created, actually allowed us to very quickly look at property and determine whether or not it would be feasible to develop on. And to put in perspective, it would have taken me historically maybe 3 days to look at a site. This probably cut it down to 6 hours. Now, obviously, I'm more sophisticated. We know the tool. It's amazing. So I'd say it's been a real game changer in terms of how you evaluate property. But what's happened in the evolving world of Ontario land planning is these rules no longer matter, apparently, because everyone just breaks them and things are getting approved. And so once upon a time where, I used to tell people, just because the person across the street got 45 stories doesn't mean you are. Like things, there's characteristics, nuances, like these things matter. Today, I honestly can't say that. Today, I'm like, yeah, maybe, probably. Like, there's far less, it's far less regimented. It's far more ad hoc. And look, that's a positive thing. We're going to create more housing. We are creating more housing. But it makes my job far more difficult. You really don't know what you're buying. And if you don't know what you're buying, you don't really know how to price it. And if you don't know how to price it, it's just downhill from there. So it kind of cuts both ways. It's amazing that we're opening up the city for density, but there's kind of these unintended consequences.
Yeah. No, and there was the Bentley presentation before lunch. Again, this idea of structural design is pretty deterministic. You've got a certain number of forces, you calculate, and you make sure everything's in balance. Planning is not that. It is completely the opposite of that because it is highly subjective, and a lot of these different policies are in conflict with each other. So
that's right.
The example here in Toronto is the zoning bylaw along Bloor Street, which is where our main subway line runs, allows you to build 10 meters in height, which is ridiculous. The province has also said that we need to see additional density near subway stations because it's existing infrastructure. So that's where we should be putting 30, 40 stories. But the zoning says you're only allowed to build 2.5. Like that's ridiculous.
Yes. And the process of getting that rezoned, just for this group's benefit, is and we do an exceptional job. I'm not saying that because I'm pumping up my own tires. Like we do a really good job. We can get rezonings done between, our shortest one was probably 11 months. My longest one is 4 years. Industry average is like 3 years. And it costs like $2.5 to $3 million. So you don't just go like, I'm going to rezone this. Like you have to, put your money where your mouth is, spend the time and energy, and you might not be successful. So there's real risk to it, and that is part of the problem. Yep. Now, I will say our partners in city planning and the City of Toronto and the province have been, I'd say very open-minded and helpful, particularly in light of the economic conditions that we're all in. But, I always say, you can give me more density. If I can't sell it, it's not worth anything. So there is this balance of where does it go? How, what built form does it take? Is that built form actually, the built form that community is seeking, i.e. is it sellable? And two, what is the cost of developing it? Developing along the subway line is fantastic, but for the complexities of developing on top of a subway line. So there's...
You want to be right beside it, not right on top of it, just beside it.
Just beside it, but close enough that the TTC doesn't have 14 layers of planning approval that could slow us down for 2 years. So it's funny when we start looking about where does you want to buy, how you want to buy it, it's these nuances that really matter.
And so, again, we've both been in the industry for quite a while, and by my recollection, this is the first time that I've ever seen all levels of government aligned on solving for housing supply. So between, every single municipality is talking about it, every single province has new policies coming in place, the federal government is making significant, investments. From the industry perspective, what do you think the role of government should be? How can they actually help unlock more of the funnel?
It's a very good question, and I'm going to try and separate my personal views from what it actually is needed. From a personal perspective, I actually think the role of government should be limited, and that the private markets should build for themselves and find opportunity, and the smartest and best idea, the most creative should call it win the day. The unfortunate realities of our marketplaces is it doesn't work that way. As much as I would love that, to build market rate housing in this city is exceptionally expensive. To do anything close to the affordable housing, or I'm not going to use affordable, let's call it attainable housing for people who are new grads in white collar or blue collar jobs. I know how much our site supers get paid. These people get paid really well, and the idea that they can't afford to live in some of our own product is kind of disheartening. And so what is the role of government? Well, if you're going to tax, or I say not tax, I'm going to advocate for more taxes here in a second. If you're not going to actually tax us on the property side, our property taxes, you mentioned you're from Atlanta. I've done some work out there. If I told you the property taxes in the city of Toronto, you would laugh. They're minuscule. They're nothing. Yeah. like I think I pay like 65 basis points in property tax, or maybe like 1.6. It's something like very, very, very small. Texas is like 3, 4, 5%. Like, so basically what we've done is we haven't been taxing the general population, and we've been saying to ourselves, growth shall pay for growth. I love the tagline. It sounds great. Growth shall pay for growth sounds awesome. Whoever created it, genius. The problem is, 20,000 new homes are paying for the growth of an entire city. So the taxes on new homes have gone through the roof. The development charges on a 2-bedroom in the city of Toronto are $82,000 a unit. That's
Plus all the other fees.
That's just a development charge. Then you have your education charge. Then that gets escalated by indexing, tied to the prime rate, which is high. Then you have parkland charges, CBC charges. Like the average load on a brand new unit, depending on who you talk to and where it is in the GTA, is something like 200 to 300,000 a unit. We sell our units for 750,000 on average. So you can see how impactful it is. If we're going to do that, and we're not going to change the way that we fund infrastructure or fund services, that's fine. But then we need all 3 levels of government to get together. I love affordable housing. I grew up in affordable housing. I think it's required. It's absolutely necessary to make what call it the Canadian dream work of moving in, having shelter, having education, and becoming a successful professional. It works. The proof is there. But as much as I would love to build it, it's not an economically viable proposition for me without the help of all 3 levels of government. And my personal dissatisfaction is government evolves with a change in leadership. So how can I build a business around 3 levels of government who get elected every 2 to 4 years with different priorities? As soon as the funding model changes, it puts the whole thing in jeopardy. So it is it's very disheartening, I'd say, is like the honest truth, because we need to build more housing. It's very difficult. Part of the reason why I mentioned we only rely on the Canadian banks is because I know RBC is going to be there for the next 100 years. So it's easy to work with a partner, if you will, who is going to be there and who's going to have the same economic goal as you.
No, the other thing that I've heard from conversations across the industry is, yes, it is great that, the provincial governments and the municipal governments are changing their policies to encourage more density, to encourage more transit-oriented communities and all the rest of it. But the flip side is that the industry also needs some period of time of stability to incorporate these changes and have it go through. Because if they're still waiting 3-4 years for approval, it's going to take a while for all this stuff to trickle through.
For sure. And it's funny, when we think about what we ask of government, historically we've just said, just tell us the cost and try your best not to change it, right? So one of the things that we talked about recently with our counterparts at the city or the province was to say, this is going back a couple of years ago, please freeze your charges. So when I make a site plan application for construction, freeze your charges. You can escalate them by some factor. We get it. Things get more expensive. But give me some type of cost certainty. And it was largely a function of the environment we were operating in, right? If you put yourself in my shoes, I had a hard time guessing revenues, but those were going up, so that was okay. I had an impossible time guessing hard costs. Every time we went to tender, and we were tendering 2 to 3 buildings a year, we just got completely different prices. And this was this wasn't COVID. This was just people, pricing things at numbers the last job I did, someone paid it. So we want you to do it. We basically asked our partners in government to say, could you just please give us some cost certainty on development charges and taxes? If you give us that, we'll handle the rest. But there's no reason why you can't, with some degree of certainty. And they did do that, but then they changed it again. So it's that change. I think again, we're in the manufacturing business. All these things are just inputs. We work for a margin. We're just trying to protect that margin. And so the more cost certainty we can get, the better off we're going to be. The change is positive. It's just the volatility and the number of changes and is what gives me kind of panic. Everywhere has volatility. I just want less of it.
So I'm going to switch over a little bit now more towards the innovation side of things and sort of major trends. So again, in the last 5-10 years, what do you see as major trends impacting your day-to-day?
Yeah, there's a couple. I mean, and I'm gonna make this more through a construction lens. I would say, look, we're a big city Toronto developer. The idea of incorporating heritage facades or just buildings into development, I think that's table stakes. Like the idea that you're gonna build in very tight conditions around neighbors with buildings that cannot be moved is, I would say that's just almost every project. When I first started in the industry, the idea of having a heritage building on your site was like crazy. The fact that you'd spend $1 million to we picked up a house, an old mansion on Jarvis, and moved it like 30 meters and moved it back for construction. That was like $1.5 million. People were going crazy about that. Like that was today. That's just it's gonna happen. Now it's like, how can you keep that in place and excavate underneath it and hold the structure up and not have it collapse on your site, right? So it's a very different level of sophistication. But I'd say that's a big piece. Being able to interact with transit, one of our buildings, we have a Metrolinx connection. We have a tunnel that connects to the subway in our building, and so the challenge that we had there is obviously, look, they're building a several billion-dollar infrastructure project. One piece of it connects with our piece of real estate. How do you get the attention of a behemoth? How do you, speak their language? They're using their own models to, source and build. And, as we all know, that last mile connection is really important. So how do you have two people who are operating on two different levels, speaking to one another, using the same tools? Especially when one's like an infrastructure project and one's a traditional real estate project. As you guys know, they're very different. I know the public market would say building a highway and building a building, what's the difference? They're very different sets of people, different sets of tools. So I'd say that's an emerging trend. Again, we're expected to be building on transit, so that becomes part and parcel. I would say beyond that, the honest truth is lower parking. I would say the technology on parking is getting there. More and more people are doing elevators. More and more people are doing stackers. You just have to, because the cost of going below grade is so insurmountable. I'm not going to talk about dewatering and soil conditions, but that's a whole, you go up to Vaughan, it's all geotech. Everything we did that was incremental and useful, all was below grade. No one will ever see it. We were basically building on a swamp up there. So how do you actually, so from the tech side, that's where the risk is. Once we start pouring typical floors, for us that's easy. But for the fact that we've been pouring, concrete slabs the same way for the last 60 years, which is mind-boggling to me. Mm-hmm. But once we get above grade, get above the podium, that's a big thing. The last thing I share with you is the flight path. City of Toronto, there's hospital flight paths for all the major hospitals, and if you don't know, there's multiple of them in the downtown. And so, again, people talk about approvals. Every time we jump the crane, we have to go and do an aeronautical survey of our crane relative to the flight path to make sure the hospital is cool with it. So how do you make that a far more efficient and speedy and accurate process, right? So there's so many ways that we could improve, and are slowly improving, but they're so I gotta say nuanced.
Right. Well, and I think what's interesting for me, and again specifically for this crowd, especially walking around the trade floor upstairs, is calling out another elephant in the room is, right, let's face it, real estate has always really lagged with tech adoption. We're not talking about robots here. We're just talking about basic, well, okay, let's make sure that our cranes aren't going to be running into helicopters.
It's tough, and I'd say look, Toronto is a hub for construction and real estate tech. There's no question about it. I'd say to you, we have been poor at adoption. I would say we've adopted a lot of stuff on the real estate accounting side, on the tendering side, certainly on the project feasibility side. So it's slowly making its way there. I don't.
Why? Why do you think it's so slow?
I think it's an aversion to change, to be honest with you.
Right.
And it depends on who you're hiring, right? The honest truth is it comes down to the makeup of your organization. We've been fortunate. The average age in our organization is quite young. We're, I think, in low 30s. And so people are more open-minded to picking up an iPad and using a piece of software that they haven't, used before. But if you have a group of people who've just done things a certain way for a very long time, and by the way, it's worked, generally speaking, it becomes very difficult to upgrade those skills. In a down market like this, sometimes it's hard to, justify the cost, or like people start writing that cost benefit analysis and like, is that benefit really going to be there? Can we justify like the improvements? We have historically leaned more towards the yes side of the equation. But I will say, like, no one wants to be the guinea pig, right? I remember when our friends on the geothermal side would come and say, yeah, we're going to build geothermal beneath your building. I'm like, okay, that's wonderful. Can you show me like 3 examples that I can tour? And can I talk to somebody who's had that in their building for like 4 to 5 years? And they're like, no. And I said, okay, no problem. Call me when someone does it, and and it's, and we'll do it. We'll talk about it. And it's because it's and I get it. No one wants, it's a reality, right? Like you need the case study, and it becomes very difficult. I'd say in a market that's a little bit more old school, kind of beating heads with, I'd say people like yourselves who are more technically inclined. To not have like real case studies becomes a real challenge for people like me to advocate for change.
All right, I've got 3 more questions that I'm going to go through, and I want to leave a few minutes for chatting at the tail end. And again, I think we've been speaking for a number of years. Again, you were early adopter of Ratio.City. And in terms of the tech and innovation, like how do you describe the culture of innovation that you're trying to build at your organization?
You know what? I think it starts with just how you operate your business. We've historically been a quote unquote lean company. I kind of mentioned to you, we're about 140-ish people, and we're the second largest developer in the city. With I don't know, like 7 projects at any given time under construction. And so the reality is, if you want to be lean, you have to have tools. So that's part and parcel. Do I think any of these tools are changing people's, like, eliminating jobs? No, they're not. They're just making people far more effective. Like, I can tell you on my phone right now, I can look up every deal that I've looked at in the last 7 years and get like real stats on it. So when I get an email of someone saying, hey, you want to do this deal, I can open my phone and say, okay, last time I looked at it was this is who owns it, this is what the pricing expectations were, I passed on it for this reason. So it just makes me faster and better. And so how do we do that? It's by proving it, having the right tools, but it's also showing people that they can do more with their time, and that more isn't more like, tedious work. It's more higher level, exciting type of work. And so I think that's where we've gotten success, is, we want people to be accountable. We want people to be, to own whatever it is they're doing, but we want them to be more efficient at it. Like, I don't want people spending, half their day doing tedious tasks. Mm-hmm. Those tasks have to get done, but if we can make it more efficient for them and honestly remove human error to some extent, like that would be a far better outcome. But it does require, and everyone knows this, you need someone to champion the idea. You need someone to buy in. Yeah, someone has to be the guinea pig. On your side, I think you have to kind of give the product away for free for a little while so that people see the value and get hooked. And if it truly is valuable, I think it will get picked up. I think we have a 90% success ratio with the stuff that has come through our door that we've tried and kept. It's about 90%. And some of the stuff in 4 or 5 years has become so integral to the way we operate that I just don't see ourselves, doing away with it.
So one of my favorite topics is the value of data specifically for real estate and the housing sector in general. So maybe if you could talk a little bit about, again, how you're using data right now and the value of it in the acquisitions process.
Sure. I kind of mentioned like our internal. It's not an internal tool. I'll just tell you. It's a company called DealPath. DealPath is an asset management deal software, like kind of due diligence type work, a big taskless component for development. And how do we use it? Well, it's kind of like a hybrid deal database CRM, right? So again, what does more data do? Well, this is exactly how it works. I get a site. I know what broker it is, or maybe I found it myself. I use Ratio.City. I mass it. I know what I can build there. I do a pro forma. It's not actionable, but all that data is stored. Next time someone sends me that site, I don't have to go digging for it. It's there. Someone sends me a site next door, I might not even have to do the full underwriting process anymore because I kind of already have now maybe 3 or 4 data points on a map, like on Ratio.City and DealPath, that I can triangulate on. You become a very, sophisticated investor very quickly. Or on the construction side, I can tell you we have a very complex tendering tracker. And so, we run full, square tenders, 3 to, as many parties who are qualified, minimum 3. We go to market 2 to 3 times a year. That information doesn't just get thrown away. Everything gets stored. We, do an apples to apples comparison between every single bid. We very quickly find scope gaps or scope creep. Even if we don't award to you, we have your number, we have it there. We tender to you next time. We can see if you're being more or less competitive. There's a lot of benefit to having, I would say very good conversations. Sometimes people are not trying to, be sneaky. They just didn't appreciate a certain nuance, right? And you can point it out to them. Or you can actually ask very informative questions as to which might impact underwriting for the future. We've been able to pick up on mechanical, electrical escalations far before the broader market because we're seeing trades come in and we're saying oh, wait a second, you're jumping on this component of the system. Someone else that we're not telling them has jumped out on another component. Does that just mean that there's a lag between both of you and there's a broader problem happening that's just down the pipeline? And so there's ways you can forecast. But the biggest thing I'd say is data aggregation is real. It just needs to be stored in a manner that allows you to read it, and I say simply, on an output page, and it needs to kind of be on your phone. I know people hate mobile apps. There's a lot of power of going on my phone and just telling somebody, this is what it is, here's the stuff, here's the tracker, on site or in a meeting, the amount of efficiency that creates. There's no more follow-up email. There's no, let me get back to you. Nothing gets lost between going to site and coming back to the office. There's a lot, if you can, whatever you're tracking or whatever you're doing, if you can put it on a mobile device and aggregate the results for someone to read simply, I think that's the most powerful thing that we have.
All right, we've got a couple of minutes left. I just wanted to open it up. Were there any questions in the audience or anything that we didn't cover that, yeah. I know.
You said you self-perform, and we're seeing an increasing trend toward that among our customers. Our customers are primarily big construction companies. Can you talk a little bit about what led you to go down that path rather than how many others do it?
For sure. So when we first started our business back in 2012, we didn't self-perform, right? We used third-party GCs, just like the majority of people. Well, our experience was we, you still have an owner's rep, right? And, honest truth is we caught some not so great behavior in some of our projects. And so then the owner's rep turned into not one owner's rep, but multiple people who are owner's reps. And then when you're watching over someone's shoulder that extensively, we found that to be not a great way to do business. Right? No one wants to have big brother watching over their shoulder. We now have the overhead of effectively half a construction team who's not really a construction team that is burdening our project. That was the first kind of sign. The second sign, as you guys know, if you're building any project, what gets projects built? Guess what? It's not me. It's the site super. It's the project manager. It's the APM. It's the finishing super. It's people, right? And so, you could have a GC. And we've had this perform, the same service on 2 projects across the street from one another and have vastly different outcomes. Why is that? Well, it's because of the people that are staffed. And so, we're creative. So then we started saying, well, look, we'll give you the contract, but Josh needs to be on the project, right? He's part of the contract. Surprise, people don't like you telling them who they're going to staff on their on projects. So then that was a problem. And then we just realized, wait a second, if we're going to hire people to watch over a GC and, we're getting friction on the people we're trying to hire, we're a big believer in incentives. Said differently, what happens to a GC after you give them their fee and the project goes, haywire? You just pay them more fees. We'd rather set a fair fee and give people a knockout incentive if they beat schedule, beat costs, and deliver on time with a certain level of completion. Like, in our world, it's like less than 7 PDIs per suite. And so we started wanting to incentivize people through that model, and we couldn't with third-party GCs. So ultimately, that kind of led us to say, well, if we can't hire the right people, we're watching over the third party, we're almost like 50% of the overhead in Division 1, just, because we're hiring people to do all this, we might as well bring it in-house. So that was a natural decision, but I can tell you, like, our construction business is not like a lucrative business for me. It's really meant to make sure that our capital that we invest on behalf of our partners is being looked after, and that there's no finger pointing. There's no, that person from so and so didn't deliver. Everyone, it's one team, one dream, right? We're all wearing the same jersey, and so it's everyone's problem. It's not your problem. It's everyone's problem. And I think that for us was the big needle mover, especially coming out of COVID, right? Like, there's so much finger pointing, everybody for every little thing, that I think that really kind of led the trend to people saying enough's enough. If I'm gonna get blamed for it, I'm just gonna own it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have really accelerated sort of delivery times, right? What sort of tools are you using with construction and keeping track of all that information and data back?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. Look, it's actually not that complicated, to be candid. So what do we do differently than, I would say, the broader peer set? The first thing that we do is, like I say, we put our money where our mouth is. We don't wait for our projects to be 70%, 80% sold before we start the working drawings process. The working drawings process for one of our buildings is like $4 or $5 million, right? So upwards of 7 for bigger buildings. So we make that capital investment actually on the onset. And so what does that do? That allows us to actually have drawings that are, call it 75%, we're going out to tender, even 100% we're tendering. We have cost certainty. We have trades lined up. We've already thought about, the window delivery schedule. We've done things during COVID, like we're going to order all the windows. It's actually cheaper for me to put them in storage than be delayed a month. So order all the windows, manufacture them, I'll pay for them, put them in storage. The cost of my capital and the cost of storage far, outweighs the cost of being delayed. And so it's things like that. On the formwork side, I'll tell you, like, we've negotiated, extra days, so we can run a 6-day cycle. And so again, there's a significant cost to that, but we're IRR focused. We're not like total dollars focused. So, depending on the construction process, depending on who's the critical path in the chain, I might go to our form worker and say, okay, let's go 6-day cycle. We can pour 2 floors every 6 days. Next thing you know, your construction schedule comes in materially. But as you know, there's no point of doing that if electrical and windows can't keep up. So it's this, I'm speaking to the right audience, like it's this orchestrated, mess of trying to figure out who is critical path. Can you get people to buy in? And here's the honest truth. We've done it so many times now that people who used to push back and say, no, I'm just not going to do that, have now been part of the project, seeing that we can get you on and off quicker. You're gonna make more money on our projects, even if you give us a lower cost, because we're gonna use your time and your capacity efficiently. And they actually are now pricing our projects in a manner that's reflective of the way we operate them, if that makes sense. It wasn't always the case. The first projects were not like that, but Project 18 is very much like that. But there is a method to the madness. Nothing is particularly complex. We make certain design decisions. We don't switch typical floors. Like, we have 3 typical floors in a building max. And what does that do? It becomes super efficient for trades. The kitchen runs are the same in every single unit. So we're cutting the same kitchen. There's a lot of small things that you do to make sure a building is built to a high finish without all the headaches that come with customization or people just not thinking about the down line impacts of a sale decision.
So you have scale and repeatability.
Scale and repeatability, yeah.
I would probably have like 10 more questions, right? But unfortunately we have another panel coming in here, but look forward to, are you all sticking around? So
Yeah, we have a few minutes. Yeah.
Be around for a few.
ask some more questions later. But thank you so much, Monika and Vader, for that great information. Very insightful, and
would love to hear more about that vertical construction integration. And I know we talked about it, a lot of the deal making process.
Thank
but
you.
What does that look like truly in that design phase and sales phase and construction phase?
Oh yeah, it's again, like, we didn't start like this. So yeah, you start learning your mistakes over the years, and just hope you don't repeat them.
Awesome.
Thank
All
you.
right, thank you.